I want to play you another clip. Michael Chandler, MMA guy. He's adopted, white guy, MMA. He's adopted a couple of black kids. I think one's name is Hap, and the other. Anyway, he made some comments about, let's play, he's not raising his children as black. He's just raising them as children. Let's play the clip.
I'm not raising black children. I'm raising children. I'm not raising black men. I'm raising men. And whether you are black or you are white, no matter what race that you are, there are certain things about being a man and being a good man when it comes to character and integrity and safeguarding the helpless and sticking up for those who need it and being a good man of reputation. None of that has to do with skin color. Everything has to do with the character of the man. And like I said, it's probably probably not an answer that some people would say is important, but that's where the world has gone, where we think that the most important thing about us is our skin color or our gender or our sex or our political affiliation or all these different identity politics or the identities that we put on each other, when really we're just human beings on this earth. And there are certain things about being a good person that transcend skin color and age and sex and religion and all of those different things.
I wish he had just added, like, we're just image bearers of Christ, because I think that's what he believes. But he kept religion out of it. Anyway, your thoughts on his opinion?
Let me start by saying there's a lot of black kids that need to be adopted. There's a lot of black kids in foster care. There's a lot of black kids in tough situations. And I hate the fact that the system is structured in a way where, parents are often divided and someone else has to take them or get them, or the state has to take care of them. It's a complicated, analysis we can have another time. But I'm saying all that to say I take my hat off, first of all, to anybody who's willing to adopt and take care of children. And the idea of saying, look, I'm not going to prioritize race in the adoption process, because traditionally and historically, white folk don't want to adopt black children. Black folk don't want to adopt black children. So I show love and respect and appreciation just for the commitment to trying to give these kids a better life. I do disagree with the idea of almost being like race, not just colorblind, but as a scholar, Michael Pollock says, color mute, where I don't see race and we're not going to talk about race. You're just a man. Because when you navigate the world, there are things that race does matter. And I'm not just talking about the kind of traditional conversations we have about, criminality or violence or stereotypes. I mean, there's that kind of stuff. But there's also stuff like when you raise a black kid, like what to do with their hair. There's things like, connecting them with their own history and tradition and culture. And if you go colorblind, if you go color mute, then you disconnect that kid from everything that is going to connect them to their peers and their friends and their classmates and their community members outside of that house. So to me, I think it's okay to say, I want to raise good people irrespective of race. But to say that I make no acknowledgement that these children of mine that I'm raising are black, I think that might be well intended, but leans so far into the realm of kind of avoidance that can actually be harmful.
So this is why I say that race is your religion and the religion of the left. Because if Michael Chandler had said, look, I'm just raising kids, I'm going to let them make their own decisions as it relates to faith. I'm not going to involve myself in it. Faith and religion are going to play no role in how I raise my kids.
Let me tell you the difference.
That makes perfect sense.
No, but there's a difference there.
That makes perfect sense.
There's a difference there. The kids don't start off. When you raise children, they don't start with a religion. They don't start with a faith. The family produces that for them. A better analogy would be if he had adopted those kids from an Islamic school or from a Christian orphanage and then said, I'm not going to acknowledge their faith. I'm going to just let them make their own decisions, right? There's an established thing race, religion in each case, and I'm going to ignore it. That would be problematic. If I say as a parent, I'm going to let my kids believe what they want, that's one thing. But if I adopt a kid at 4 out of a church, or at 8 out of a church, and they have a faith and they have a religious practice and they have a commitment, and then I don't engage that or nourish that, I think that is irresponsible as a parent. And similarly, these kids come into the world with a race that, the race isn't something we can pretend doesn't exist, just like your faith isn't something we can pretend doesn't exist if you have one. That's the difference. That's the difference. That's why I don't think it's an apples to apples comparison.
Well, as a Christian, I certainly believe and know as fact, you don't enter the world without God. Children are a gift from God.
I said faith, not God. I said faith, not God.
It's a fact. In my view, it's a fact, but I hear you. In your view, it's up for debate. In my view,
what's up for debate?
It's a fact.
What is?
Whether a child, your birth, your existence is a gift from God.
No, I'm not debating that. I think you missed what I said. I'm not disagreeing with you. I said what I'm saying is a religious practice. I'm saying that a kid does not come into the world with a doctrinal belief in the Trinity or in the prophets, or these are things that we teach kids, right? I'm not denying that babies are from God. That's not my dispute at all. All I'm saying is you made the analogy of saying I'm okay. I have a problem with a person saying that they're not going to talk about race and that they're going to be kind of race blind, but I would be okay if they're faith blind. And my point is that I wouldn't be. If there is a person who has a clear and observable faith, just like a person has a clear and observable race, I'm saying we can't ignore either. But I'm saying the difference is a baby, even if I pretend race doesn't exist, I can still see that you're black or white. If I never nurture a religious practice in you, I'm not talking about God. I'm saying an actual faith tradition, a practice, like going to church, praying, believing in this, believing in that. I'm saying.
Let me clarify my words then.
Yeah.
Let me clarify my words then. Because when I was talking about faith, I was really just talking about God. And so people are bringing children into this world who think there is no God. And that me and mama, or me and my spouse, we did this. And there are people like me that say, no, God did this, everything. He did this. And so if the man had said, I'm going to have a neutral or no position on God and how you were created and what you were, no one would have a problem. I'll let you figure it out on your own. It's unimportant. No one would have a problem. But if the man says, and this is why I just say this race thing is like the religion, this race is God, has replaced God. And there's this idolatry of race that the Bible spells out. All this stuff that you put ahead of God is idolatry. That's what I'm getting at. The man could have an interview and say, I have no position on God. I'm not going to tell these kids anything about God. I'm going to raise them as if there was no God and let them make their own decision. No one would care. Yeah, but the man says, hey, listen, I'm just raising men. I'm not raising black men. There's a set of values and characteristics that all good men have. I'm trying to instill that in them. Now this is problematic. Oh, they've ignored race. Oh my God. Doesn't he realize how important race is? And there are those of us who believe it's just not important. There's a set of values that should come from the Bible that's far more important than sitting around talking about race and, oh my God, you may get pulled over by the police. And if you're black, let me fill you with all these lies that the police are going to do to you.
I don't think that's the only.
It's all. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Remember, I started by saying that that's not the only race talk that we should be thinking about. I think that there's two sides to it, right? And again, I think that we should raise kids with our values, with faith values, with religious values, whatever your values are. I think that that's important. I don't think we should ignore that either. But I think, to use your analogy and flip it on its head, or your example and flip it on its head, if he said, look, I tell my kids, just because you're black doesn't mean you have to be an athlete. Just because you're a black girl doesn't mean you got to be twerking. I don't think you'd be offended by it. I think you'd be okay with that. that would be talking to them as black children. That would be talking to them about race. That would be talking to them about raising black children. And none of you would have nobody on the right, hear me out, nobody on the right would have an issue with that. So my experience that the right is okay talking about race as long as it's rooted in dealing with the pathologies. And my experience is that the right feels that the left is okay talking about race as long as it's about being a victim. And what I'm saying is let's not choose between those two things. Let's have an actual, honest, nuanced conversation. But to do the nuanced conversation, you can't pretend it doesn't exist. Just like we can't just pretend that God doesn't exist. Just like we can't just pretend that faith doesn't exist. We can't pretend that race doesn't exist. I want to have the race conversation, but like I told you, the race conversation for me is not just, okay, here's how you're going to get shot. Here's how you're going to get mistreated. That's a part of the conversation. But again, I'm talking about practical nuts and bolts stuff. Like, look, you can't wear your hair the way these other kids wear their hair. It's not going to work the same way. You need a swimming cap when you get in the pool. That's not magic. That's not me wanting some of the truth is, if you tell your daughter not to wear a swimming cap in the pool after you pay to get her hair done, some shit's going to happen that's different. That's about being black. There's a conversation we can have about that. And also, I want my kids to know that they don't have to twerk or sell drugs or lift weights or be an athlete in order to be legitimate. That's a race conversation. I want to have all of it.
God, it doesn't have to be a race conversation. Unless you're a leftist and you've established the white man as God, then you have to, when you talk to your children, again, let me finish my point, and I get your reaction, but
I'm just
when
listening.
you talk to your children, you start from a reference point of, well, you have to do this because your hair is different than white people. Whereas someone may start with the position of, you have to do this because your hair is coarse, and that chlorine in that pool is going to make it's going to roughen up your hair, so you got to put this swimming cap on. You can have that conversation without ever juxtaposing it to what white people do.
No, you can't.
And so yes, you can.
Not
I don't need to be told that white people.
Jason,
I don't need to be. My parents don't have to tell me, put this Murray's grease in your hair because your hair is different than white people.
Were your parents white, Jason?
No, they were black.
Exactly. I'm not saying that.
So he doesn't have to.
I'm saying
he doesn't have to tell them, well, white women's hair is stringy and straight, therefore I got to put this grease in your hair. No, baby, I got to put this grease in your hair because it's going to make your hair better. White people got nothing to do with that. I can tell you as an experienced parent of 20, almost a quarter of a century now, that you can have that conversation without comparing it to white people when there's not white people around. But if you're in a family where everybody's white, and everybody's putting one thing in their hair, kids want to do what their siblings do. They want to do what their parents do. They want to dress like them. They want to walk like them. They do their hair. When kids go to school and they're surrounded by all white people, which is likely if you're rich and successful in a white neighborhood, just ain't that many black people there. They're going to want to do what the white kids do, and that's why you have to have the conversation. So you're making a comparison out of context. I'm not saying that whenever you talk to black kids about themselves, you got to compare them to white people. I'm saying in this example where you're a white parent surrounded by white people adopting two black people, you're going to have to explain to them that some things about them are different, not worse, just different. And you have to do that. That's just reality. Look, and again, I know I don't want to go into utopia world, but it's just not as necessary as you think. I don't spend any time in the morning thinking about, and it doesn't matter. People are different, and some kids will have red hair, some kids will have blonde hair, some kids will have brunette hair. People are different, and all of these things don't require some mammoth explanation that revolves around race. You will have kids white families will have kids that one guy's a great athlete, one guy's a great student, one guy likes music, the other guy doesn't like music, and maybe he's good at math. Who knows? Kids have differences. They have different styles of hair, wear their hair different, all of this other stuff, this whole uniformity of, oh my God, it's so traumatic. My hair is different than my siblings, and so I have to give you this explanation because so-and-so's doing so. Parents have these discussions all the time. My brother had to deal with the fact I was a great high school athlete. And people went to my football games and track events and all that. My brother was a better student than me. They didn't have to sit down with my brother and say, I know we paid a lot of attention to Jason because he's playing football, but you're different, James, and blah, blah. We just create all these complications and all these explanations, and we center race, and we think race explains everything. Race is your religion. I get it. But there are those of us that's like, hey, this isn't our religion. It doesn't need to be explained in every aspect because these differences in skin tone and melanin are so superficial, so inconsequential, so just not a big deal in the grand scheme of things, but we've placed it and continue. Instead of making progress, we're going the opposite direction, that everything requires some great racial discussion. And your line of thinking is why there's this myth out here that, oh God, black parents have to sit down with their kids and tell them how to deal with the cops.
Yeah, I didn't say that.
Ever since, no, I know you didn't say it. I said your line of thinking is consistent.
What I'm saying the opposite of what you're attributing to me. I'm saying
your logic. The same logic that's making you think
it's not.
Okay,
what I'm saying is you're misrepresenting my point. What I'm saying is that you said that I say that every conversation has to be this drawn out thing about. I'm saying no, it doesn't. I'm saying that something has to be. I'm saying that you can't raise black children as a white parent for 18 years and not have a race conversation. I'm saying that if nothing other than every time my white behind walks in with your black behind, somebody says, who is that? Is that your friend? Is that your butler? Is that your driver? Is that your parole officer? Is that your mentor? Is that your Boy Scout? Whatever. Right? Like, people are going to ask you that. That's a conversation you're going to have, and you're going to say, well, it's because they see a difference in us.
I know the disconnect.
I'm not saying that every conversation is that. I'm just saying some of them.
I recognize the disconnect. I recognize the disconnect. Michael Chandler, in my view, he didn't make the argument that, hey, we'll never discuss race in my family. That was not his argument. His argument was, I'm not raising black children, I'm raising children. I'm not raising black men, I'm raising men. And it's a appropriate position to take, particularly, and I'll go down your path, because the way blackness has been defined in American culture, I don't blame him for that. Because we have a culture that will tell black kids, you speaking proper English, you trying to sound white. What you making them good grades for? You trying to act white. These are all things I heard, my brother heard, my sister heard, all things very commonplace that I'm sure he does address. And so what he's arguing is like, no, I'm just raising good men. And so it's not like, hey, I'm never addressing race in my family. But right. So I'm not going to have some sort of racial standard. I'm not going to have some kind of racial standard that everything has to revolve around. Well, black people do this.
That's fair.
Let me tell you why black.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you go ahead.
Oh, no, I mean, I think we're getting closer to consensus here. I definitely, my experience is that when people say I'm not raising a black person or a white person, I'm just raising a person, that they often achieve that goal by never talking about race. He didn't say that, you're right. My concern and my skepticism, my wariness is of how he arrives there. But also at that moment where you say, look, I don't want him or her to be all these stereotypical pathological sort of identities around that are associated with blackness. I want them to just be a person that moves through the world with these values and have these experiences. I hear you. But the way to do that is not to take the black off of it. It's to actually say that that's not what black has to be. So rather than say, you're just a student, right, and you just speak English, what you can say is, black people actually can be good students, and black people actually can learn differently, and black people can code switch, and black people can achieve high, and black people can take care of their families, and black people can ... right?
He doesn't want his children. He does not want his children think I'm a black American. I'm a black this or that. He wants his children to think, I'm a man, I'm an American, probably, I'm speculating here, I'm a Christian. That's what he wants them to think. I'm a Christian, I'm a man, I'm X, Y, and Z. All these black things that you've tacked onto it, that's what you want them to think. And it's because, and again, as a Christian, I want people to identify as a Christian. Many black Americans, particularly leftists, want you to identify as a black person. It's a mistake. And particularly, it's a mistake when the culture that has been created for black people defines many, many things that you and I know are negative. And you got to say that's one of the blackest things you can do is say nigga. Nigga, 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 nigga. Oh, that's how you prove you're black. Oh, drink this Hennessy, smoke a little weed. Make sure you know every rap song that talks about sexualizing women. Make sure your grades aren't too good. Make sure that you don't pronounce words and use proper grammar. These are all factual things that have been dumped on black people in this culture that he said, you know what? I don't want you carrying that burden at all. I want you to think I'm a Christian, I'm an American, and I'm Michael Chandler's son or daughter, and you got to answer to me, and I got to answer to God. That's all he wants them to do. And that's a better plan than all of this, well, let's make sure that, you know, everything's juxtaposed. Well, you got to put grease in your hair because white folks don't, and all this. It's insanity, and it's
but again,
producing
I never said that.
Horrific results. I know. I took you a little out of context. I agree.
Yeah. And so for me, you know, it's about finding that balance between those two things. I don't think we have to obsess about race, but I think we ignore it at our own peril. I think we to pretend it doesn't exist at all is to.
What do you say to me? I'd say we prioritize it at our peril. That because we have prioritized it for more than 100 years. Look at the results. It's not working.
I don't think that's not what's dysfunctional in the process. I think it's far more nuts and bolts, meat and potatoes than that. I think we don't have access to capital. I think we don't have access to the spoils of democratic citizenship. I think
money fixes it. This is again why
I'm naming things. It's not the only thing. I'm naming things. That was just the first on my list, but it's somewhat arbitrary. But you know, I can name 3, 4, 5 things that I think are the issue. But I'm saying fundamentally, the issue isn't that we identify as black, and we would never tell that to any other ethnic group. We would never say to Jewish people, you know, Jewish people have been oppressed all over the globe. If only you would stop identifying as Jewish, right? We would never say that because that would be wrong. Right? We would never say that to Christians.
Well,
or Christians.
Let me be crystal clear. I want everybody to identify as Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. Everybody.
Even people who don't believe in Jesus.
If you don't, yeah, that would improve the world. I would like it. Now, again, am I going to enforce it on them? No, but I would like for them to. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I would.
Fair enough. I got to go do my show, but man, this you done wore me out, man.
I'm gonna let you go. Yeah.
You done wore me out. I'm gonna have to take a break before I do the next one, man.
Thank you, Mark.